Well, hey there, it's good to be with you again. It's Friday, January 15th, and just want to begin this devotional by asking you a question. Do you have a favorite go-to? What I mean by is, do you have a favorite sweater or a favorite shirt? Do you have a favorite chair? Or do you have a favorite pair of shoes or work boots or that sort of thing? Something that's well worn, yet you feel like really comfortable in that piece of clothing. We grow attached to things that give us comfort, including clothes. There's a sense of security, even maybe I could say wellness, a sense of wellness. I know a few people who couldn't part with their well-worn leather jacket. They must have been 30 years old, these jackets. The seams were ripped, the color faded long ago, but they still wore it pretty much everywhere they went. They never parted with it. Nothing else would or could replace that leather jacket. So we can grow attached to something that gives us a sense of comfort or security. Think of infants and toddlers who grow attached to a stuffed animal or a blanket. It's a comfort item for them. And they take it with them wherever they go. The animal or the blanket, they become soon well worn, almost unrecognizable sometimes. They're sewn or they're resewn for the umpteenth time, but nothing else can replace that stuffy or that blanket. It's the security and comfort of that item they become so attached to. So when they're put down at bedtime, when they're left alone in their bedroom, the lights might go off, they crave one thing. If they cannot have their mom or their dad, they crave that blanket or their stuffy, no matter how well worn it is. I think we find ourselves craving for the familiar, for the comforting, for the dependable when we find ourselves in times of uncertainty. We look for that, which I think is why for many Christians, Psalm 23 is a favorite go-to. It's a well-worn psalm that uses imagery and words reminding us God is always with us. That He's always with us in our deepest struggling and unknowing, that God is with us in it all. This well-worn psalm brings us back to that deep and needed truth. Even the hardest times, we are not alone. When the most recent lockdown was announced, followed by the order to stay home as much as possible, if you were quiet enough, you could almost hear a collective groan across the province. I know I kind of inwardly went, oh, not again, though we knew it was coming. The second time around will be more difficult for many than the first. The coronavirus is impacting all of us, to be sure, both as individuals and communities. The very fabric of everyday life is changing before us. These are, as it's been said many times before, unprecedented times. And in the midst of this, we're invited to find God. And so all the more reason to go to the favorite go-to for many in the Bible, Psalm 23. So for the next several weeks, we're going to go verse by verse through this well-worn, well-loved psalm, which has been often prayed and sung and repeated in other hard times. We are going to reflect on Psalm 23 and its implications for our life, now more than ever. So we're going to look at these well-worn words, these words that have stood the test of time. These are words and images and promises that we can lean on, that we can lead us through. So I'm going to read that psalm right now. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Walter Brueggemann, in his book, The Message of the Psalms, categorizes all 150 Psalms into one of three movements. Either it's orientation, or it is disorientation, or reorientation. And each of these movements exemplifies a part of our human existence. So orientation, the first movement, that's when everything feels right, and we're content in our lives. The second movement is disorientation, when life feels difficult. It's dark, it's broken. There's lament, there's despair. And the last movement is reorientation, when God pulls us out of the brokenness of life and we're brought to this deeper sense of awareness of who he is, and gratitude as well becomes part of that. Brueggemann argues that we go through these rhythms of orientation to disorientation to reorientation, and it's part of the human experience. And the beauty of Psalm 23, and why perhaps it has become one of the most famous passages in human history, is that all three movements exist in this passage. Psalm 23 is a compilation of the entire rhythm of the human experience. The first three verses are of orientation. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Life is good, happy, it's blessed. The Lord provides us with lush green pastures and refreshing waters. God is known to be reliable. But then verse 4 suggests that there's a disorientation. Talk about the darkest valley. There's a description of suffering we go through as humans. And later in verse 4, there's a reorientation. The psalmist says this, "For you are with me." There's an expression of trust and confidence. Surely your goodness and your love will follow me all of the days of my life. So you can perhaps call this devotional an introduction to Psalm 23. A well-worn psalm that we're going to wear out just a little bit more over the next few weeks. So perhaps you might just want to find some time today, or sometime over the next week, or when you're feeling a heaviness or anxiety amidst this lockdown, and turn to these familiar, comforting words of Psalm 23. See you next week when we look at verse 1. God bless you.